Welcome to the Friday edition of One's World, and today I'm going to take you to the town of Bergamo in Lombardy. It's not terribly far from Milan, it's kind of north of Milan, and I went there 5 years ago when I was back in Mantua, also known as Mantova in Italian, because I had to collect some things that I'd left there. I'd gone from Mantova to Myanmar in Mandalay with one giant suitcase, but I left one behind, knowing that I was going to come back for various reasons. And I stayed in Mantova for a couple of weeks and did what I used to do when I lived there permanently. I used to go out somewhere on a Saturday, and I went to places that were not too far, Brescia, Bologna, and so on. Well, when I went there for my return vacation, I had much more time to travel, and I thought Bergamo would be a suitable place to go for a variety of reasons. One of them is that it's got this very old part of the city called Città Alta, which means the high city, and I thought, okay, we'll do that for a day. So here you can see the various ways you can get there. You can go by bus more or less directly from Mantova to Brescia and then on to Bergamo, or you can take a train to Milan and then up to Bergamo, or you can do what I did, which is to take a train to Verona, and then there's a straight shot from Verona to Bergamo through Brescia. I also went to Brescia on another day, but that's for later. Now Bergamo I really wanted to see for several reasons. I wanted to see it because it's famous for several dishes, which I'll talk about towards the end, and it's also just famous as an old fortified walled city. And so I packed my camera and my backpack and off I went for a climb. And the one thing that I wrote on Facebook at the time was that when you think you've got to the top of Bergamo, you haven't. There's always more. I went up and up and up. So let's get started on that. So here's a map of how I went up and down from the train station, marked here as Stazione. I went up on the grey marked lines and came down on the blue lines. Could have gone up and down either way, but that was just my choice. And normally when I was wandering around unknown or strange cities in Lombardy, I would set my GPS so that I knew how to get back to the train station when I wanted to go on back home. But in Bergamo, no need for that, because you are either going up, which is on your way out towards Città Alta, or you're going down. So going up, you're going away from the station to your destination, and going down, you're going back to the station. It's not a problem. And the station area is very wide, boulevards open, lots of shops, not particularly crowded, just nice, easy walking. And pretty soon, when you walk away from the station, you'll begin to see glimpses through side streets of the climb you've got to make. And so you just do it. And I did it very slowly and methodically. It wasn't terribly hot, fortunately. I'm guessing it was around 28 degrees centigrade, something like that, which is hot enough, but not desperate. And as long as you keep out of the sun, it was fine. So started climbing up, and the minute you climb up from the flat area around the shops and the train station, the buildings just get older, and the walls get older, and you can tell that you're in an old part of the city. And on the way up, there are some churches, and just as I did when I was in England, walking around Otmore, if you remember that, nice to pop into a church every half hour or so just to sit down, cool off, take a few photos, and then back on and up. And I'm guessing that it took me maybe a little under an hour to get up to Città Alta. And you know you're there because it's a flat space with a very, very big piazza, with a cathedral there, with other old buildings, a museum, various places, and restaurants. And in fact, I had lunch at this particular area simply because I was hungry. It was kind of early, but I wanted to eat. And I wasn't quite sure, but as I started walking around the piazza and photographing and going into various places, I soon realized that I was nowhere near the top, not by a country mile. There were lanes leading out and upward, and also steps at various places, but mainly a roadway. And then beside the roadway was a funicular railway. You'll probably know funicular railways from mountainous areas where they more or less go up steep inclines at about 45 degrees. I've toyed with the idea of going up by funicular, but I thought that was a little bit weaselly, and so I walked up the road beside the funicular railway. And I'm glad I did, because there were some just glorious views as I walked up. And I got to the next level, and there were other beautiful old buildings there, a church and so forth. And that was when I realized I still wasn't at the top. That to get to what appeared to be the top was a matter of climbing more stairs. And unlike roadways that are just inclined on a hill, stairs are kind of my downfall, but they weren't too many. And when you got to the top of that, you got to both an old chapel and some old fortifications. Like, obviously Bergamo was built on steep hills to act as a defensive route against whatever invaders were coming. Bergamo is very close to the Swiss border, and also to what was once the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and Austria-Hungary was constantly invading this part of Italy, and so they were constantly having to defend themselves. Napoleon conquered this area and so forth. So the defensive sites were really very important historically. So I wandered around this area. There were some nice gardens up here, and there was in fact a route to an even higher destination, but to do that I would have to go down into a valley and then up and so forth, and I was a bit worn out by this point, so I decided no, I won't do that. So I just trucked on down and took yet more photos on the way down. Very just gentle. I could have taken the funicular railway down, of course, but you know, going down is always dead easy. So like, why not? So there are two things that I also want to point out about Bergamo, and this has to do with Italy in general, really. Every single town that I know of in northern Italy, certainly in Lombardy and in Tuscany, has its own specialities. They all have their own pizzas, which they're very, very careful to tell you is the best in the world. And they're all different, but they also have their own version of pasta, and often of main courses as well. The standard pizzas in Bergamo were just wonderful, but they also have two versions of polenta that are particular. One of them is very solid and acts as a kind of snack, I guess, and the other is more wouldn't say soupy, but it's you eat it hot as a side dish. But the reason that I went to a restaurant in Bergamo was that I wanted casoncelli, which is a kind of stuffed pasta, sort of like ravioli, but not really. Stuffed with sausage meat, beef, and a kind of a boiled egg, and over the top shredded lardons, basil, oil, and tons of cheese. You can see it here. I had it with a nice tricolore salad of mozzarella, tomatoes, and basil. Just delicious. So, as always, if you enjoyed this video, please like, please subscribe, please tell your friends. And on Tuesday, I'm going to take a break from travel for just one day. I'm going to show you my onion gravy recipe that I use for making bangers and mash. So have a good weekend, and I'll see you then.